Is the Comte Saint Germain alive or is he dead? Let's talk about it. As always, this will be a major spoiler for the novellas and maybe the show. I doubt it, but if you want to read these books and you don't want to be spoiled, keep on scrolling. This will have major spoilers. I've actually wanted to do a character profile on the Comte Saint Germain because he is a very, very interesting character and one that surprisingly comes up again in the books when I really thought we were done with him after season 2. As a refresher, in season 2, we see him with Claire and Master Raymond, and the king is trying to have Claire determine which of the two men between the Comte Saint Germain and Master Raymond is lying, because Claire is La Dame Blanche and is able to see through a man and see who is speaking the truth. They both have been accused of sorcery at this point in time, and obviously we know that Claire had a relationship with Master Raymond, and her and the Comte had a very strained relationship, given that he gave her poison while she was pregnant. He tries to defend himself in front of the king by claiming that Claire is evil, essentially, and in order to kind of save the whole situation, Master Raymond pulls out this poison and says that all three of them should drink from this cup, and whoever is absolved of these accused crimes, they can drink the cup without being poisoned, and if they fall ill from the cup, that means that they are they're part of the sorcery that they're being accused of taking part in. He has this flask, I think they call it like blood of the dragon or like dragon's blood, something like that, and Claire and him drink it and are fine, and we as viewers see the Comte de Saint Germain writhing on the floor, falling ill, very ill from this poison. And so it is implied at that point that that is the demise of the Comte Saint Germain. And then 30 years later, in Joan's novella, The Space Between, he makes a reappearance in Paris. When he makes his reappearance, he actually has a different name. He is going under the alias Paul Rakowski, which is of Hungarian descent. And at this point, it is 1778, and he comes back to Paris after it is kind of implied that he has traveled through time numerous times. He has a woman that he goes back and forth with who is teaching him the ways of time travel. So theoretically, he's gotten stronger and more well-versed in time travel since we last saw him. And when he returns to Paris, he is eager to find Master Raymond once again and learn more about the man who spared his life, because we come to find out that the poison was meant to be an illusion for the king so that the Comte could escape. And also, I would imagine he wanted Claire to be able to go on with her life, assuming that the Comte was gone and out of the picture. Unclear. I don't remember all the details on that one. Realistically, though, he mainly wants to learn more about the magic that they seem to have in common. The Comte Saint Germain is not a good person, and the more you learn about what he's been up to the last 30 years, the more clear that becomes. So how he gets involved with Joan is actually quite a brilliant, I think, plot point. So when Joan arrives in Paris, she goes to Mother Hildegard, who you'll remember from season 2, who Claire was very, very close with. And she delivers a letter from Claire to Mother Hildegard. And in their conversation, Joan's poor French makes Mother Hildegard believe that she's actually Claire's daughter. That's a situation where things get lost in translation. She doesn't have the language to say stepmother, so because she hears Claire has a daughter, Mother Hildegard gets very excited knowing that Claire ended up having another baby, given that she was present when she lost her first baby. Now, Michael is a merchant in France, and he was married to a French-born woman who we learn had recently passed away in the events of episode 9 of season 7. And he is talking to a friend of his who is French, and also accidentally relays information that implies that Joan is Claire's daughter, not her stepdaughter. And that information ends up getting back to the Comte Saint-Germain, who at this time, again, is going under an alias, Paul Rakowski. They end up having Joan and the Comte meet in the street one day, and Joan has like an instant voice in her head about him that says, tell him not to do it. And so she says that out loud to him, don't do it. And the Comte is very caught off guard by her ability to almost like read his thoughts right out the gate. There's also a whole subplot with Michael and his friend Charles Pepin, who is the one who relays the information to the Comte. I'll leave that out just because you should read the novella, but there's a lot happening in this novella. The next day, the Comte goes and kidnaps Joan from the convent, and Michael ends up going to his home right before they leave and seeing him with Joan, and he's panicked trying to figure out how he can save her. The Comte brings her underground to a cavern where they have stones to time travel through, and insists that he doesn't want to harm her. He just wants to show her something. And Joni goes against her will, and he is very disappointed when she says she cannot hear the buzzing of the stones, because that implies that she cannot time travel. That's when Master Raymond shows up and confirms to him that Joni is not a time traveler, and then shortly after that, Michael appears as well. In this interaction, the Comte actually realizes that he is one of Master Raymond's many sons that he has had throughout time, and there's so much more to the story with Master Raymond. I really hope at some point we get some more information on him, because he's just a fascinating character that has obviously time traveled to many different points in time, similar to the Comte. He has too, but just a very interesting character Master Raymond is. At this point in time, though, the Comte Saint-Germain has never time traveled forward. He's only ever gone backwards, and so he asks Master Raymond if he would be able to show him how to travel forward in time, and that is when the two of them go through the stones in front of Joan and Michael, and that's where we leave them as of right now in the Outlander verse. That is how we leave them. There is also an entire subplot about how the Comte Saint-Germain is tied to Fergus, which is also fascinating. That is an upcoming plot point that, just given how they're handling Fergus and Marsley, I'm not sure if they're going to include in the show, but he's woven into upcoming plot points. So again, I would highly encourage you, if you are fans of the book, or are at least like somewhat caught up with where we are presently in the show, to read the novellas. They are a good quick read. They have a lot of additional information that I think is really helpful when giving context to the current storyline, and are also just fun to know all of the lore and the deep dives on all of these characters that we probably would have forgotten about if they didn't get brought up in more recent lore and upcoming lore in the story. Not to mention, the Comte Saint-Germain is actually a real historical figure. Go figure. So that's also interesting to learn about if you are curious. Another fun tie-in is that there is one other novella where he is briefly mentioned as Paul Rakowski, and that is A Leaf on the Wind of All Hallows, which is another novella written about Roger's parents, actually. So again, he's interwoven into many stories. Definitely look into it if you are curious. I highly recommend reading the novellas.